My dear students, in this passage, the narrator exclusively brings out the picture of a village. He brings out a scene which could happen only in the village and never in the city life. Let us read the passage and find out the incident. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer. While the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in a chorus, my grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time, the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapati we threw to them. If we read this passage, we will come to know certain things. First one, in those days, especially in the village, both God and education were taught together. They were taught side by side. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer. You see, the priest taught both the alphabet as well as the morning prayer. And another thing what we come to know is the gratitude. You know, the dogs that they ate chapatis, they followed their guys till their home. So two things that cannot be seen in city life. One, the God and the learning, the alphabets were taught together, and another one, the gratitude of even the animals where it is insisted in this passage. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. If we read this passage carefully, the turning point in the relationship between the grandchild and the grandmother is said. Their parents are comfortably settled in the city and they sent for us, meaning they called them, both the grandchild as well as the grandmother. There begins the separation, a break in the relationship, or in the author says, in the friendship of the grandchild and the grandlady. Though they shared their room together, the grandmother did not or could not accompany the boy to the school. In this passage, my dear students, the difference between the village life and the city life is slowly said. First one, no longer came to school. Who? The grandmother was not allowed to come to school, and no longer the grandmother went to school as she did in the village life. One. And secondly, the walking was absent. So there was no more walking in the city life. The boy was taken in a motor bus. And as it happened in the village, there were no dogs in the streets. So the difference between the village life and learning and the city life and learning is expressed in this passage. But you remember the grandmother who was brought up in the village and who was addicted to live in the village. She never failed to caring for the animals or birds. There she fed dogs. Here she picked up the habit of feeding the sparrows. So she continues to be what she is now. Let us read the next passage. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English schools and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. This paragraph brings out the conflict between the grandmother and the grandchild. If you read this prose carefully, you will identify the conflict between village life and city life. Actually, the grandmother stands for village life and the grandchild stands for city life. The indifferent attitude of the grandmother shows or expresses the conflict of these two people. See, my dear students, read this bold words. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school. So actually this passage takes us to the terms of belief. She was convinced or she did not believe in the things they taught in the English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. So the only blame the narrator wants to say or underline here is that there is no teaching of God in the English school. She did not believe or she did not like the way the grandchild is taught in the English school, and so she was distressed. All right. For her, or in other way, in the olden days, education, learning cannot be separated from God and the scriptures. Both should go hand in hand. They are the two sides of a same coin. So, which was missing, which was absent in the teaching of modern education? And that is the reason why one day when the author announced that they were being given music lessons, she said nothing. Her silence meant disapproval, and she rarely talked to the author, which means she doesn't accept, she is not able to accept the modern way of teaching. The author must have been very happy to announce that he was taught music lesson, but she was rather disinterested or indifferent attitude towards the teaching of modern schools. My dear students, this passage shows, expresses how the relationship gap is done between the grandmother and the grandchild. How their relationship is widened, how the gap is brought, gap is made very strong, is expressed in this paragraph. This passage shows that she is almost addicted to loving. She can't but keep on loving. When there is no her grandchild, she pours out her love to a love for the animals or the birds. Now here is a turn that she pours out her love for animals. Let us see in this passage. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion. Underline the word. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. Only in the afternoon, she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda, breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected around her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirping. Some came and pecked on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She smiled but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. Yes, students, a beautiful philosophy and moral value is set in this passage. Namely, if you read this word, grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. One day or other, or any time in a day or in life, all of us will become lonely by all means. At that time, what we will have to do is, first of all, we will have to accept our seclusion with resignation, because we cannot do anything against such kind of seclusion. So we have no other go. In such a time, it is the moral value that we need to first of all accept our seclusion with resignation. Only then we will be able to come out of that seclusion. Alright? My dear students, lack of acceptance is the major problem in every family, not only in India but all over the world. When there is a sense of acceptance, almost all the problems in the world will be solved. Here, the grandmother expresses the sense of acceptance. By way of accepting, she tells us, or the author through the grandmother tells us, that we need to develop a kind of sense of acceptance during to an untoward situation in our life. My dear students, happiness is not in what we receive but what we give. In the matter of love of the grandmother, it is true. She was very happy in giving her love, in sharing their love, than receiving our love. So this passage also tells us that we should be more concerned in giving or sharing our love for others than receiving the love from others. Alright? Shall we see the explanation for the rest of the passages later? Alright, my dear students, thank you so much. Have a good day.